In the Know. I am joined by Mason and Jeremy, who is back from gallivanting across the world, somewhere in the ocean, sailing the seven seas, being a pirate of the Caribbean. Welcome back, fellas. We are here to talk about more draft stuff, really, honestly. But talk about some playoffs, talk about some Pelicans news, and get the show rolling. So, thanks for joining. Let's kick it off.
The New Orleans Pelicans select Zion Williamson. And Holiday, the dribble penetration. So tough going to the goal. High above the rim to rip it down.
Hello, hello, hello. How is everybody doing? I see some baseball jerseys on. I see Mason, the non-committal Pelican stuff just going on. the original,
The original.
shirt.
This is my high school for my 25th year class reunion. This what it says. I'm just old.
We'll take it. Old, but really not that old. So Jeremy, welcome back. We are glad to see your face. Beautiful hair, new glasses.
Brought these glasses back. So yeah, kind of new, kind of old. People like them, so I'm keeping them.
How was sailing across the ocean?
Better than being on land. I'm not a land lover, though I am back.
What's interesting is I am very much the opposite. I think if there's one thing I have a phobia of, it's the deep ocean. I don't rock with the ocean. I need some firm ground underneath me. You know what? Boats are fine. I don't really get seasick and whatnot.
Yeah.
But just the general concept of the ocean is something that's scary to me. Ever since I learned about what's up.
I was a funny fact. I didn't know how to swim until my son learned how to swim, and I figured, hey, I have to save him just in case he does the thing of being a child. So I better learn how to swim.
That is a great catalyst to learning swimming. But one night I was just sitting in bed before and going through like this YouTube wormhole of things, just watching things, and the topic that came across my algorithm was rogue waves. And they're exactly what you sound like, so for years and years and years, sailors, pirates, for centuries, would come back from whatever their excursions were, and they'd be like, there was this super massive wave and it randomly appeared and it wiped off the ship. Why am I being spotlighted? No.
Welcome back. Welcome back to Schmidt presents In The Know.
But yes, these rogue waves terrify me because they can randomly appear out of nowhere and they can be like 100 feet tall, and scientists weren't able to confirm their existence until they did, and they confirmed their existence. They're like, oh my God, these sailors were correct. And now there's different kinds of rogue waves. I don't know. I can go off on a whole podcast about this, but the point is,
you created your own phobia in your head, and now you're not going to take a cruise?
Is this just because you watched Titanic when you were a kid and now you're scarred permanently?
No, it wasn't even the Titanic. It was I just think it's something about these waves, man. Phobias are not rational. Why are you trying to act like these things are something that I can control?
I fly a lot for work, and flying is like incredibly safe, right? Like one of the most safest forms of transportation, and with all the stuff with the FAA and cutting workforce, I used to take one plane into one airport in Chicago when I fly there. Now I intentionally fly into O'Hare because it's the bigger plane. Like that is absolutely irrational, but I'm still doing it. So I'm with you all the way.
I just leave Lake Lanier alone, and then we just go to other bodies of water. That's the only one that I have I want no parts of.
I have I want to acknowledge this comment, and let's talk about Lake Lanier for a second, because I have a really good friend who lives on Lake Lanier, and I went to Thanksgiving at their house, one year when I'd lived in Atlanta. They were kind enough to have me over for Thanksgiving, and they gave me directions to the place, and I was like, all right, cool, that's cool. And the way it works to get to that spot is, you obviously take a highways and you take it off the highway, take an exit, normal stuff, and then you take a sharp right into the fucking woods. And there's no sign, there's no lights, there's a very narrow dirt pathway, and that pathway goes on for a mile. And so you're questioning your sanity the whole time while driving down this driveway at night. You're like, I cannot see anything. Did I even make the right turn? Is this like, am I just gonna end up in the water? Like, is this like the movie Get Out? Like, like what's going on? But great place on the lake. I did not put a pinky toe in that lake because I know what's but beautiful house, beautiful lake. I will observe it from dry land. And John is right. These rogue waves have caused a bunch of shipwrecks in the Great Lakes. They have a let's talk about it. There's different kinds. There's one called the Three Sisters, where it's like a 30-foot wave, and then a 60-foot wave, and then another.
You know way too much about this.
And it just goes.
You know way too much.
Insane. Anyways, I feel like the rogue wave of injuries has hit the Pelicans every single year. And now I am tying us back into basketball. Let's talk about basketball. Quite the tangent that we went on. There was some Pelicans news this morning. Mark Stein, he produces a Sunday column where he just shares bits and pieces of information across the league. A lot in there, about Phoenix's coaching search. Giannis is obviously the hot topic on everybody's mind. Like every single news release from any of the newsbreakers has to include Giannis. And there was a bit about the Pelicans in which he said that the Pelicans putting Zion as a lottery representative is not nothing, and the league sources have told him that Joe Dumars intends to work with Zion, and this is not a move that you would do if you were trying to flip Zion. You know what I mean? Like it's a sign of their both sides' commitment. So that's a topic in Michael here in the comments who has a very similar question to the one I'm about to ask you guys. He's like, I read that Dumars is committed to building around Zion, but Mark Stein, is that true? And so I want to get your guys' general feelings on that bit of news.
Sources, baby, sources.
Don't you actually? You probably have like a work phone and a personal phone. You could have had a prop ready to go, dude.
I got 2 phones.
Oh man, no, I unchanged from where we were before, right? Like this is the optics that has to be played here. I mean, if you just telegraph to the league that you're going to want to trade Zion, then all of a sudden your negotiating position is at a deficit. And so I think what I would love to know is kind of how they've messaged this to Zion. Like I feel like it doesn't, like, apart from actually having to do this for the team and make the trip, like asking him to do this is not nothing, right? Like it's his off season. He can do what he wants. And so they're asking him to do this. And so you would hope that this is actually a gesture of good faith and and there is real intent here, not just the trade leverage negotiation game. So like, that's the one thing is like the human side of this. Like it does feel kind of like a dick move if they're still, if they're actually trying to shop him and doing this just for, a front. So, hopefully this is actually genuine, but regardless, not surprising to me because they can't tip their hand too much here either way.
Yeah. It somewhere between posturing and hoping that they, shouts out my homie Brandon, posturing to hopefully, they do come to the conclusion that he just doesn't have good enough trade value and he can boost it up and play for the squad this year. At the end of the day, even in Schmidt's report that I'm going to stick by until it is completely changed, he states that Dumars can get the opportunity to try and make it right with have Zion come to the fold. He's going to try to do that. Just because it's a mandate by your boss doesn't mean you can't talk your boss out of it and try to get it done better.
Yeah, because like, I guess the last thing is, so I'm kind of reading this comment here that's absolutely true. Is if you play this to the other extreme where Zion thinks the Pelicans are going to trade him and want to trade him, why would he want to help the Pelicans negotiating position? Because he should want the least return possible for him, so the team he's going to can keep the most assets possible. So if I was Zion, I would not want to help the Pelicans trade me. I would want to, like, I'd want them to not have to give up or not be able to get much for me. So my new team is as as in as strong a position as possible.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things to consider. One, if you are of the believer that they were never going to trade Zion in the first place, that these mandates were not true at all in any capacity, you would look at everything that has played out since Dumars has been hired and be like, see, like there's no reason to believe there ever was a mandate, right? Dumars, he picked Zion as the representative. To my knowledge, he and Zion have met prior to the lotto. They had a long conversation. And Dumars said he was going to go talk to players and listen to people. This was more so than just a, hey, how you doing type of deal. Like, I think there was, a legitimate conversation between the two parties there. And I know Dumars has been trying to do that with not just Zion, but just, just getting to know who works for him in any capacity. Right. So if you look at that information, you're like, hey, look, all the evidence that has come out supports the case that there is no mandate. Right. At the same time, if you believe there was a mandate and that really Gail is the one that's calling the shot here and she's told Joe to go make the best out of this situation, you also look at all the evidence that's coming out of this and be like, this is how I would do it if my owner told me that I got to make this move, right? So I think I want to be very clear here is that we've talked about this a lot with regards to how Joe is going to operate here. Joe is very much going to have the authority to do what he needs to do, right? Where it gets murky are things like very, very, very high level ownership. We can use the word mandates, we can use the word guidelines, whatever you want to say. But when ownership says you have to duck the tax, Joe's got to do whatever it takes to duck the tax, just like his predecessors did in Dell Demps and David Griffin. If Gail Benson says you have to keep Willie Green around, why haven't we heard anything about Willie Green?
He's in the war room.
So, what I'm trying to get at here is that ownership is not the type of ownership that meddles in day-to-day GMing affairs. They don't even really have any interest to do that. The whole reason they hired Joe was to, you take care of this dude. We don't want to hear any of this stuff anymore. You run the show. We trust you. You're one of us. You're going to make things successful. Where I am at personally is that I am very much open to the possibility that Joe and Zion are working together, and this is something that they want to consider. And if you're a smart organization, the way you play the Zion situation out is you let the market dictate Zion, right? You let market dictate any move, right? There's no, we got to keep him or we got to trade him. It's, oh my God, this offer is unbelievable. Let's jump on it. Or, oh my God, they are offering us Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, and a bad first-round pick. You're like, okay, that's how it should play out in the rational world. But what it would take for me to move off of my position is if I start hearing chatter, internally about this is the partnership we want with Zion. This is the player that we're targeting in to fit with Zion. This is who we're, that kind of stuff. And they very decidedly have not gotten to that point yet because they're still, in the combine draft focus stuff. You're not hearing that chatter come out. We also are not hearing any real chatter come out about the Willie Green situation in terms of, is he staying or is he going? And obviously if he's staying, he's under contract. You don't need to make a comment on a situation other than he's under contract, right? You're not going to hear about them interviewing other candidates while they still have someone in that position. That's just not how it works. So if the Willie Green situation doesn't change, then I don't have any real reason to believe that the Zion situation has changed either. But, I'm open. I'm open to seeing it play out.
Why not? What's the worst that could happen? You get injured and it gets further down the tank and you have to attach picks to him. That's the worst that could happen.
What's crazy is that just I've reported on this several times now, just about the lack of support that Willie Green has in the organization, and it just it blows my mind that someone could walk in as a leader into this situation and evaluate all that is coming out of the organization and not try everything they can to convince ownership, like, dude, we just got to make a change here. And look, maybe that is what is transpiring with Joe right now, right? Maybe that's why we haven't heard anything. Maybe there's stuff going on there. But like, I would say between Zion and Willie and the mandates, the one mandate that's more likely to be broken, in my opinion, is the keep Willie Green mandate. Like that one, I just feel like it's so far over its expiration date that like I think a change is going to come, and if you don't make a change as quickly as you should, because you got to like run a coaching search, you got to go do all these other things, then it's going to cause a lot more problems.
I just feel as though that the Woody thing is going to turn out like Memphis this year, even if they do well, or they don't, but it's not relatively well, and they still scuffling for the bottom of the Western Conference play-in, and he's fired late in the season. Like I can see that transpiring because on the outside, everything you read is how great a coach Willie is, but everyone locally says it's time to move on. So I can see this standing pat. They just don't want to pay another coach. And then Joe Dumars, I wouldn't say get his way, but say, look, it's just not going to happen. And we need to move on. And it happens in, mid or late season.
What is the upside to waiting to the middle of the season?
None. There's none. And I will call it an embarrassment, just like I did with Memphis. There's no upside. The upside is figuring it out now.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think historically, again, the Benson group doesn't like to make midseason firings. Like the ones that have happened are large exceptions. You do pull the trigger, you pull the chute in the middle of the season. What message does it send to your team? What message, like, are you even going to have time to run a real coaching search? Is it going to be one of those, well, Joe knew a guy and he's just in the building? You know what I mean? Like, what I don't know.
I'm going the exact opposite way. Like, I can see they're like 30 and 28. And Trey, Jose, and Herb goes to Gal like Kamara did.
Not Jose. Not Jose. Jose is not going to be one of those people that goes to Gal.
If he gets another contract, he may. But the Trey and Herb just go around and like, hey, we tried. You got to do something. We got to get Trey, Herb, and who's a crazy and Morris Bart. There we go. Trey, Herb, and Morris Bart walk up there and say,
the big three. That's the big three.
And just say, hey, we tried. Now let's do something for real.
Can you run a pick and roll? We are experiencing some technical difficulties with Mason here. I think something's going on with his monitors that he can't quite figure out.
Yeah.
Nope.
It's a disaster, man. I'm here. I'm here at everything. I don't know. I don't know what's going on, but I'm here.
He's also on the cruise, and he can't. His visuals are not working well.
Like last week, I just dropped. My kid was sick, by the way. For anyone who's just like, "Where's Mason go?" And now it's actual technical difficulties. But no, I'm good. I think for now, as long as my computer just doesn't die on me.
Yeah. So look, it's just all going to be interesting to play out. It's so early in the process for Joe and everyone else. Like, I think it's like if you are a rational actor and assume that everyone's going to make the rational move here, Joe's going to want to give it a go with Zion because that's an incredible talent. And if he feels like, hey, I can fix him in a way that Griff couldn't, like that's like what he should want to do. Unless, again, we talked about like the offer's crazy, and he should want to move off Willie, just usher in a new era that's entirely his, right? This is Joe Dumars' era. He's going to stamp it. He's going to shape it and push it into what it needs to happen. Now, the major decision that is going to usher in this new Joe Dumars era that isn't one of those two people that we talked about is this draft pick that the Pelicans are going to perhaps select at 7 if they don't trade it in one way or another. So I want to now drive the conversation more towards the draft aspect and talk about general concepts and some of the players who might be available. Mason, what is going on with your monitors? Because he's there and then he's like not there.
I'm here. I'm seeing my battery thing is showing that in like 10%, but I'm plugged in. So like I'm my computer could shut off, or it could just be like my things aren't reading. So it's
I'll be one second.
let's just roll and let's pray that let the computer doesn't die.
Okay, yeah, we're just gonna roll and pretend that the computer isn't gonna die, and if it dies, it dies.
It dies.
So look, last week we had Chuck on, and Chuck did an amazing job of just kind of highlighting what it might mean to be at 7B, the kind of players that are going to be there. And so one thing that Chuck mentioned that I have no reason to believe is going to happen otherwise is that outside of the top two, which are Cooper and Dylan, the next three off the board in some fashion are probably going to be VJ, Ace, and Trey Johnson, which will leave you Con Knipple, Kaman Malawach, Jeremiah Fears, Derrick Queen, a lot of these players that are in that next tier. And you'll read a lot of consensus mocks, and that tier is as big as like 8 different players, depending on who you talk to, right? Just kind of in the eye of the beholder. Now, based on all the stuff that's coming out of the combine and these mock drafts, it seems like it's a pretty good bet that Khan is going to be gone by the time the Pelicans are selecting, right? Like between the Wizards and the Jazz and somebody like that Khan's going to be selecting there. So we have a group of prospects that I wanted to discuss today, and obviously we can dive into any ones that you guys may have a preference for. We have a point guard out of Oklahoma in Jeremiah Fears. He was one of the youngest players in the draft this season. He was supposed to be a high school senior. He reclassified, kind of like what Kyra did, played above his age group, and had a really, really productive season. Didn't quite shoot the ball well, got to the line a ton. I guess we can talk about him as a player in a second. The other 2 players that I wanted to discuss were Kaman Malawach, who played for that incredible Duke team. One of the best physical measurables in the draft in just terms of wingspan and standing reach, measured up very similar to Gobert. I think his standing reach was like 1 inch less than Wemby's. Just a massive, massive, massive human, and Duke would use him exclusively as a rim runner, dunker, that kind of a player. That's how they used him. Derrick Queen played for Maryland. He was a 6'10" bruising forward. Played a very bully ball style, a lot of drives to the paint, really good footwork and touch around the rim. Just a very skilled player at this big position, kind of reminiscent of like a smaller DeMarcus Cousins or a little bit of Nasri. Nasri, of course, is now in the NBA, a very, very good shooter and shoots at volume. Queen wasn't really a high volume 3-point guy, but he tried stuff. He tried jump shots in the paint and that kind of stuff, and I think there's potential for him to be there. So now, out of these 3 players, we'll talk about the merits of each one from the outset. Do you guys have a preference for any of them?
If you want to take the biggest of big swings, I will go with Fears. Other than that, give me Malawach. Give me my number 1 target out of those 3 would be Malawach, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yeah. I guess my 2 criteria, I know we talked before about don't just say best player available, right? My 2 things that I think about, given some of the things what we've talked about in past years around how once you turn from draft pick to player, the value decreases, right? But and so in that light, I think the 2 things that come to mind for me are 1, time to positive value. So how long do you have to wait for this guy to become something that's going to help your team? And then 2 is absolute upside. So if you can't do either of those things for me, if it's going to take a while for you to kind of figure out the NBA game, and then if you're picking in the top 10, I mean, my answer changes as you get further down to the first round, but which is why I kind of lean Fears here. I just see that archetype. There's some risk there, but there's also some really nice boom potential. And I think if he booms, he's helping you quickly. And so I'm willing to roll the dice there at 7 on a player like that. If I don't see that in the other two guys, and right now I just don't. And so that's my criteria at this point.
So both of you kind of mentioned Fierce as like the absolute upside guy, and Mason, I think the third thing that I want to mention, you made 2 points there. The third thing that I want to mention with these draft picks is, I feel like, and I don't know if front offices do this, maybe some do, some don't, but there absolutely needs to be consideration when you draft a player is how much value is the theory of this player going to retain, so that when I inevitably have to flip him or use him in a trade or do anything like that, I will have a good amount of value, right? Like, and I think historically, you see a lot of teams kind of like retain like wings for that reason. They're like, okay, well, someone's going to come calling on this wing because the theory of this guy is he plays defense and he hits threes, and someone will come do it, right? But as you guys both mentioned, Fears is somebody who the theory of this guy is he's an automatic paint touch. He's an automatic advantage creator. He might be the best advantage creator in this class behind the top 2 guys. Maybe there's an argument that he is as good as Dylan in terms of advantage creator, and definitely not an argument that he's as good of a finisher. One thing that separates Harper from Fears is Harper was an unbelievable finisher at the rim. His size obviously helps him, but in the half court, where Fears in the half court really struggled, and his size is a big deterrent there. And I think someone's already made the comp here, and I want to get into it, of is undersized PG like Kyra Lewis PTSD. So there is something I want to talk about there regarding that. But you guys mentioned him as the absolute upside guy. Why does he have a higher ceiling than, say, a 7'2" guy who can, if he figures out a 3-point shot?
I'm not getting Mo Bamba again with the 7-footer who can shoot. No, I'm not doing it. No. But with Fears, first of all, like you say, he's a baby. He is going to be the youngest guy in the draft class. He can get a paint touch, as you already said. My worry that I haven't seen anyone, really point out, when he goes for a crossover, he has the tendency of trying to use his off arm to push in the back as he's going forward. And I wonder,
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander?
Yeah, but you're not Shai right now. And I can see defenders, because he can't shoot, go under. He tried to do that and meet him there, and it's going to be an offensive foul. But other than that, like he's a paint touch, and get the baby some food. Get some muscle mass. And I would just say, because he has an elite skill of being able to get 2 feet in the paint at will, that's something I can work with. He has an elite NBA trait already. Over, as much as I love Malawach's ability to block shots, if he gets too jumpy and too block happy and the lack of rebounding, I will get worried.
Yeah, and I'm gonna let my kind of what I've seen from NBA fives kind of dictate my perspective here, in that you've got to be like Karl Anthony Towns level shooting from a volume perspective and an accuracy perspective for me to feel like the 3-point shooting is going to move the needle. And so if he already had a shot that I had confidence in, that would be one thing. It's so far to go. And even when you get there, like, are you really truly a spacer? I think is a fair question to be asking. And so without that, I mean, is it like Gobert, like the comp? And if Gobert is the comp, for every Gobert, there's like a bunch of guys who didn't get to that level. And if you're picking 7th, I don't know.
Yeah, we haven't even really talked about Queen here for a second, and I want to get to that. But the Gobert comp is interesting because Gobert, a lot of his values driven from the fact that he is a one-man defensive system, and the other part of his values is driven from the fact that he's actually an underrated offensive impact player because he sets absolutely bruising screens, and the threat of his lob opens up a lot of stuff for everyone around him. I say threat because the guy has no hands, and they never really like look to pass him. Like how many times did the Donovan Mitchell when he was back in Utah just like kind of like, yeah, you know what, I'll go take this layup instead. I'm not gonna throw you this lob. Even Ant in like the early settings was just like, I don't really know. Now Ant's like,
Rudy. The only person who passed him the ball is Mike Conley. You just try to pretty stuff. The only one who passed him the ball is Mike Conley.
Right. And he was obviously an excellent offensive rebounder. Which Malawak is also, he is, I would say, analytically right now, Malawak is a below average defensive rebounder for his size and position, but a very, very high level offensive rebounder. We've seen someone in that mold, and that someone is Yves Missi. And I think there was already a question in the chat here about Missi and Malawak. Whenever you find it, I'll put it up here. But the spirit of that question was basically like the front office. Oh, here we go. Would the front office spend first round picks on centers 2 years in a row? And I think that's a fantastic question because bigs who are non-shooters and typically one position defenders, unless they are absolutely elite at something, like there's a very diminishing value to that kind of player. So do you guys have any thoughts on if they went through their whole scouting process and they determined this guy is the best available player at 7? What do you feel about this idea of having 2 centers in a row here?
This front office didn't pick Yves Missi. That's at the end of the day, this front office didn't pick Yves Missi. So if they decide that Malawak is the guy, they're going to select him. It doesn't matter if they have mirroring skill sets. That's my center, and the dimensions are better, and I believe in him more than I believe in Yves. It's unfair. It sounds harsh, but he's not my guy. He has to prove it.
Yep. Same. I mean, I agree. I think, and if Yves.
Oh, we lost him. The battery died. The battery died. Oh, no. I shouldn't have said it. It died, guys.
I think I was going to say, I will say, if Yves proves himself that he should be the center of the build going forward, so what? But if the question is about the front office in general, I just don't believe this front office is going to care about the previous draft selections, especially because it's not as though Yves is, knock everyone's socks off.
Yeah, the ones they care about are Trey and Herb. That's who they care about, because those are very, very good NBA players. Are already on their second contract. What I will tell you is that, we've already discussed this. Michael Scotto's already reported it. We've talked about it on this podcast. They pretty much replaced the scouting group from yesteryear, and they brought in their own people, right? They have new voices. They have different ideologies. Both Troy and Joe are big believers in this concept of going big, being bigger across the positional spectrum, but also playing 2 bigs. Like, they are very much believers in that. And that's why, like, one of the big reasons we're discussing Malawak here as a concept is this idea, like, okay, like, what if they determine this is the guy? And I think the factors that go into him being the guy are a belief that he can be a one-man defensive system.
Yep.
His
before you interrupt you, he has a little badminton. Like, he's not scared to defend on the perimeter, even though he's best used as a rim deterrent. But I've watched him when he's at the top of the zone in Duke zone Coop will play weak side defense. Like, he's not afraid of hedging on screens and defending in space at all.
No, not only is he not afraid, Duke would just leave him out there. They were like, hey, we're not going to send help. Like, this, you do what you got to do. And there was a moments in the tournament, like, Mark Sears would have him isolated at the top and just would want no part of Malawak. Yep. He moves. Malawak, what's interesting is he did not test well athletically in the combine in terms of like the lane times, the jumping, all that kind of stuff. It was quite poor. But like, I've yet to find it's one of those things where it's like if you really believe in a guy, you're like, oh, look how well he
Yeah.
tested. This is
Uh-huh.
incredible. Like this is why he's going to be awesome. And if you really believe in a guy and he tests poorly, you're like, tests don't mean anything. Like it, what I will
He was
say,
doing that so to take his draft status. That's what comes out if you test poorly and he gets drafted anyway.
Yeah. What I will say is like I haven't seen like a truly good study on the public level. I'm sure NBA teams might have this, but on the public level of that compares combine scores and measurements and all that to like NBA productivity and if they are a true like predictive measure in any capacity, right? Like to me, when I see those things, like I tend to look for like wow me numbers and like, oh my gosh, like I didn't expect this guy was a lot bigger or jumps higher or is faster than anticipated. Or I tend to look for like wow me in a bad way, derogatory numbers,
Yeah.
like, oh, this guy measured in 5'10, like that could be a problem. Or this guy measured in like 165 pounds,
Yeah.
that could be a problem. And so outside of that, I think for the most guys, like their ability to play basketball really determines how successful they're going to be rather than those measurements. So yeah, going back to Malawak, like the belief is he's going to be a one-man system, and two, the belief is he's going to be more of the player that he showed when he was playing with South Sudan in Basketball Without Borders. And this is a player who prior to Duke, a lot of his tape, and again, he hasn't been playing basketball that long. It also sounds like Eve Misi. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. We'll see. I think it depends on player to player. But this is a player who showed, the ability to go coast to coast. He showed the ability to step out and hit jump shots, and he was doing that before he got to Duke, where Duke was like, "You're the tallest guy, and we're gonna have our guys when Cooper goes to the rim." You're going to be in the dunker spot or you're diving with him. And when inevitably he draws two, you're going to get the world's easiest layup or dunk, and same thing with Khan. Like we're going to run a little pick and roll with it. You're going to get an incredible dunk. And I'm trying to sell him short, but like he did a good job in that role. And I think he from day one provides better vertical spacing than Eve does as just because of how big he is.
Yes. Being 7'2" and being almost as long as Wimby, it's just in general, you're going to be a vertical spacer.
Yes. And so,
can we speak on Queen right quick?
Let's speak on Queen. What do you got to say about Queen?
Well, first things first, he's just a fun basketball player. Like if you watch him play basketball, he is like all the things that you love about Boogie. He does do that. He's fun. Including some of this fun is like 90s basketball for real. Like he is fun. He is gonna try some passes. He's gonna try to bring the ball up the court off of rebounds. He's gonna hit his little Al Jefferson 18-foot jump shot. Like he is fun, a real throwback. I just don't know if I'm ready for fun when it comes with a couple of mistakes. But I would love him on just. I would love watching him if I had no desires to win games. I would love watching him as a rookie because he's gonna be fun.
You talk about no desires to win games. You know what's the comp that I've seen and that I actually kind of really like for Queen is Şengün. And the reason I think that comp is fun is that Şengün, I think right now, maybe rightfully so, maybe not. I mean, he's pretty young. He got kind of criticized for not really having like an outside game, but being kind of undersized at his position, requiring paint and post touches to kind of operate, which restricts the kind of offense you can build around that player. It's just it's a limited archetype, right? Mm-hmm. Şengün also dominated his minutes analytically in the whole Warriors series. So for every talk about how bad Şengün was, I think if I remember correctly, the Rockets were like 5 points per 100 better with him on the court, and the net on off was like 25 points. Because they were like the Houston was like I don't know, like 5 points better with him and 20 points worse without him, and that ended up being 25. I think it was something absurd like that. Small samples, I get it, but he won his minutes in a very tightly contested playoff series. Now, Queen, I think, has a lot of similarities to Şengün in that people are trying to pigeonhole him there. But I think what separates Queen from Şengün is that the drives from the perimeter. When the Pelicans ran their two big system with Alvin Gentry and Chris Finch, one of the staples was DeMarcus Cousins or AD like attacking from the slots. Like they
Yes.
would those wing drives and like maybe one would be posting up or on this side and then the weak side guy would come with the ball.
Yep.
Yes, there was a lot of that. Queen is very capable of operating in the same way, and because he's so big and he's so skilled that once he gets going, it's very very hard to stop him
Yes.
from
Yes.
getting where he's going, and that's what
Yes.
makes him a lot of fun. The other thing is that like I genuinely think there is a really good passer in there. Like you watch his tape and you watch the reads that he likes to make,
At
and you're
least
like,
an adventurous passer, I'll tell you that much.
adventurous, absolutely. And I don't think I don't think the assist numbers truly do him justice there. And I think if you are betting on a guy to boom because of the skill set, it's the passing. I'm going to drive. I'm going to collapse the defense. I'm going to kick out. Now, the conversation then just comes back to how valuable is this player type, and we've seen it in terms of like you look at Sabonis, what he is, incredible rebounder, a good passer, a great passer. Sorry for his position, a great
Yes.
passer, a developing shooter, although at low volume. Just an incredibly efficient scoring machine. But his teams have not. I don't think he's ever made it out the first round. Sengun, first time in the playoffs. A lot of his stuff was exposed on tape in terms of like what he's able to do when he's not able to do, even though he won his minutes. Can you win? So my question to you is like, even if you believe like he can become like a Sengun tier player, like, do you look a gift horse in the mouth and be like, I don't know if that's even a player that I want or even want to try to build around?
Build around is a stretch, but like if you start slow and he's like on the bench and mandating bench minutes, because another knock on him that I really point out is that he's a below the rim player,
Yes.
despite being a massive guy. So you're not going to get a lot of contests at the rim. You're not going to get a lot of pokes or steals because he's not like playmaking athletic on the defensive end. So I do worry about that matter as great, as fun, as it's crafty he can be offensively, if the other side is just going to be such easy pickings because of his lack of lateral mobility and vertical mobility. And I'm by myself.
Wow, so many technical difficulties.
Hey, so would I pass him up? I don't know. I'm not going to completely rule it out, but there's a reason why he's third for me in the three prospects that we were speaking on, and it's mainly because I don't know how he'll be on the defensive end, and he only has one position he's going to guard.
What I'll say is, if Willie Green is the coach, it is the worst, like one of the worst picks you can make. Green is not going to give him. What's up, Nico? How you doing, man? Thanks for joining. Green is not going to give him any kind of the freedom because, like, I think, like when you have a guy like Queen, you have to feed him offensive possessions. And what
Yes.
Green's tendency is with these type of players is, one, he hates bigs who are offensive oriented and are generally, I don't want to say like oafish, but like, like with JV, like he kind of
I say
JV
Willie Hernan Gomez.
Gomez.
Like he shouts out JV. I still miss you, buddy. But yeah, he wants defensive oriented players. He wants fives that are going to defend the rim, who are going to defend in space. Not saying that a coach should dictate who you draft, but if you select this guy and he's not going to play him because we know what type of players he prefers, it's going to seem like it's going to fall on the players and call him a bust, even though look at Ty Jerome. A coach didn't like him. He wouldn't play him. And I like JB Bickerstaff. This is not a knock on JB per se, but if you're not going to trust these offensive first players and you're hiding the talent, like it seems like it's a waste of a pick.
Yeah. I mean, I'm 100% with you. Is Queen similar to David West? Asks L2 the 5. I think it's when you start comparing players to like players who were, I mean, I guess I kind of did the same thing with Sengun, but like guys who were like all stars and like, I don't know, man. When I think of David West, I think of like tough as nails, no
Yeah.
nonsense, mid 17-foot assassin, like,
Yes.
you know, step out, can hit long twos. And I think like while Queen tries to like, obviously the pick and pop long two game is like kind of evaporated from the basketball space due to the numbers revolution. Um, Queen doesn't really like he wasn't really all that successful in the mid range, right? He attempted shots, you know, he would try to take his you know like fadeaway shots and just pull up over some people, but like, oh, we got Mason back. We got Mason back.
There we go. The band's
All right.
back together again.
Yeah. But yeah, I just think like West was so good in college, and just obviously as a pro that like that one I that one's tough for me. That one's I would not say that they are similar.
I will say this. I think Queen's from Baltimore, so he may decide to he'll try to check someone's chin. So he may have that part, the toughest nails aspect down.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I do wonder what kind of player would David West be in today's NBA, in your guys' opinion?
The first thing they'll tell him to do is stretch out to 24, 25 feet. But I still think he has the pick and pop game. I just think a dude like that who's no nonsense is going to make the court one way or the other. Now, will he be as efficient? He's going to need a similar point guard to feed him touches like Chris Paul, but he's going to play. Like even when David West, the jumper wasn't falling anymore, he was just a role player for the Warriors and for the Spurs. Like he's going to find his way on the court if David West. Would he be? Someone said Randall. James said, "Would he be similar to Julius Randle?" I don't think he had that burst that Randall has, or that bully ball mentality that Julius has.
Yeah, I think Mason. We're talking about Derrick Queen and some of the similarities, and I think Randall, again, just like he's kind of become a very very talented wing attacker, worked tirelessly on his shots, become a very high volume 3-point shooter guy. James is asking if would David West be Randall in today's game? I feel like West would be asked to play center more so than I don't know. It's a weird situation.
Like,
Obi Toppin is what, like
6'9", maybe.
Yeah. Like Obi Toppin, but a starter and a better rebounder. Like, what's that? I mean, he'd still be a 4. He'd be asked to shoot threes.
Well, he's willing to defend 5. So is the bid would it be next to Chet, where he just bullies 5s? He takes on the Jokic assignments and things of that nature, but also gives him a little more spacing, as Chet also shoots from 3, like something like that.
Maybe.
I assume someone's made the Anthony Bennett comp out already.
Oh, come on.
Oh God. Yeah, Robert's in our chat saying West was incredibly active. Queen is one of the least active off-ball defenders I've seen in my life, and that's true. Like Queen just kind of like acts like he's bored out there, and so it's just one of those things where it's like, is there something in him? So when you look at a player, like, is he capable of doing it? Is he incapable of doing it, or he won't do it? And with Queen, I don't know that he's incapable. I don't know if it's a won't or a don't want to, or I'm not doing it right now.
And like he was like Maryland's offense, so I completely can understand. Like, hey, yeah, you 4 are gonna have to defend the perimeter really well, so I can get these buckets.
So I think what we're brushing up against is kind of like the question, since we're kind of again the if you're struggling to place like what David West would be in today's NBA, why is Queen a good pick? Like what does Queen do for you? What kind of team do you have to build around him? Let's say, for example, Zion is on the team, right? Are you envisioning a front court with those 2 guys in the future?
No. I just can't see it.
That would either be incredibly fun bully ball, or the most frustrating, just like no defense, turning the ball over in the paint, no rim protection.
Hey, John is gonna get you for saying Zion doesn't play defense. He's gonna get you for something because Zion's activity, when playmaking. He's gonna get
Zion
you.
plays defense when he's in shape.
Yeah, Zion. He's gonna get you about Zion not playing defense. I'm letting you know now.
But this all gets back to like the age old question of if you felt very strongly that Queen was the best guy available, but you've got the whole Zion thing sitting there, it's, staring at you in the face. Do you take him?
I'm a big Queen guy. I think he could be Şengün, and I think you can find a front court partner that works with him. I think maybe Queen is not someone that ends up being someone that can hit threes, but I think you can go find someone. I think, like, for example, like the Celtics are going to give away Porzingis for free, right? They're trying to duck the tax. I think someone can go find a Porzingis. And yeah, I think Queen works very well with a guy like Porzingis. You just kind of toggle the roles 4 or 5 on defense, whatever you need to do, or versus offense. Now the question is, like, can you continue to find guys like Porzingis that will fit next to Queen? And that's so much harder to do. But it also kind of goes back to my general philosophy of keep throwing darts at these bigs that are skilled and can shoot. And eventually when one hits, the value is just going to be insane.
I just like the fact that every time Porzingis is near contract, Schmidt is ready to try to get Porzingis in. What y'all don't know, so before I joined the pod, he would text me constantly. Washington's gonna give him away. Just get him. He's gonna give him away, and he was right. So
I don't know. I mean, like he's just been largely unavailable with the Celtics too. Like I've been right, I've been wrong too. Like he doesn't play, and that you just can't have that with Zion, right? Like he's just I mean, you can't have that period, right? If he's a key piece, but you can't have it if you're going to get assets to take him on. Like I don't care.
Yes.
Give me the assets,
John put something in the chat. If you draft Derrick Queen, do you just try to get John Collins?
I mean, he would work, right? He's your athleticism.
Question: if David West was hitting corner threes, how close would he be to John Collins?
I think John Collins is more bouncy. I think he's a different player.
Fair.
I think West had like a very complete offensive package that I don't think you can just ISO John Collins and be like, yo, like just go make something happen, bro.
They both are point guard dependent too.
No, for sure. Yeah. So I think the last thing that I kind of want to like cover with you guys is like we've watched this OKC series against Denver, and the talk of this series, and not just this series, just across the playoffs, has been the physicality. Like what is allowed in the postseason is very, very different than what is allowed in the regular season. The regular season is fine, it's whatever. But if your eventual goals and aspirations are to make the playoffs and to be a competitive team and have these guys around, these guys are your homegrown draft picks, does your thought process change on the type of players that you should seek to draft? Or does it just like whatever, you worry about the playoffs when you get to the playoffs?
I'm more the latter. I just don't think dudes who playing basketball for the most part are not gonna embrace the physicality. Like shout out to Najee. I don't know if y'all heard him on the Young Man in the Three. You need some dogs. According to Najee, his friends on this team are still dogs. So I just think you draft and you have guys that on this team who going to embrace physicality. And they did it against that Thunder team that I still believe if the guy who was injured, I won't put the guy whose number's back here, showed up for a few games, that they take them to 6 or 7 games because they did deal with the physicality well. They also forced turnovers. They played them tough. They just got some 2 of 14 games. And
they did, but now most of those guys who embrace that kind of physicality are not on the team anymore, right? So the Pelicans of last year, when they ran into the Houston Rockets of the world, when they ran into the OKC Thunders of the world, when they ran into any of these teams that like to crawl into your jerseys, what happened? They got their ass kicked. in
But they're also
every single one of those
small.
games.
They're also so small.
They're
compared
really
to
small, right?
that's
So
the
like
biggest problem.
you're now relying on back-to-back draft picks who are small for their position in Hawkins and Misi to come like overcome this production barrier and this physical barrier. And so it's just like you're climbing uphill. I think it has to be a consideration. And I don't know, you watch Fears and he's someone that measured in like 6'2" and like 179 pounds, and that's pretty small, right? I don't know how that's a guy that holds up, against the Carusos of the world or the Lou Dorts of the world and whatnot.
Hey,
And maybe he doesn't need.
Jokic didn't hold up against Caruso. Let the internet tell it. Your thoughts?
We're not going to go
Mason?
there. It's for a different podcast. But I will say like I got sidetracked on the Fears and Kyra thing. I talked to someone who's scouted both players and evaluated them, and they said the difference with Fears and Kyra is the Fears, his offensive productivity against tougher competition in stronger conferences, it did not crater in the way that Kyra did. Obviously, Kyra had a little bit of a different sample because it was the COVID year, everything got shut down. It didn't crater in the way that Kyra's did, and part of what allowed him to maintain his productivity and not be as volatile against like tougher competition was the fact that he has an in-between game. He has a floater game. He has a mid-range game. Those are things that he goes to, and his efficiency and volume in those aspects blew Kyra out of the water, where Kyra relied a lot on fashion. I'm going to get downhill. Once that didn't happen, there wasn't a what's next type of deal. And in order to have this in-between game, a lot of these guys that are successful at that in the league are capable of changing the pace that they play with. And in this guy's opinion, Fears very much has this like deceleration, I'm going to catch you off balance type of game and that's a big reason why he got to the free throw line like a metric fuck ton in college. Like he lived at the free throw line.
Yep.
I guess the one thing I'd throw on, you were talking a little bit about how the playoffs inform your draft strategy, potentially with OKC specifically. And I think it just tells me more than anything, like I felt like this playoffs more than many has one, if you put the devastating injuries to a few folks to the side, like it's been all about matchups, right? Like I look at Lou Dort as a classic example. Like Lou Dort had Brandon Ingram in hell in our series, right? But then in this series, like he kind of didn't have a role for Oklahoma City against the Denver Nuggets, that team. Like I could see him fully, bouncing back as another guy to throw at Ant next round and having a good series. And so I think it just really does come down to matchups. And I kind of lean the same way as Jay. Is like I don't want to make a decision based on what I think might happen in the playoffs, because you don't know who you're going to play. You don't know what the team dynamic or makeup is going to be that you're going to play against. And so I'm not going to try to. This is in the East, right? Where you think it's probably the same two teams that are going to be there every fucking year. And so you can try to get, scheme and try to figure out how you're going to match against that team. And look, Knicks did it. Knicks, it had outlier shitty shooting from the Celtics, but they did it. The West, you can't do that. You just can't. There's too many good teams. And so you just got to, trust the process and trust the talent to beat the most matchups of other good teams.
Yeah, and I think OKC's depth, if the thing going to mimic, and it was similar to the 23-24 squad, you need to have enough NBA caliber players where you can flip up the matchups, where you can say, okay, this guy can sit down and we can find our 8 to work with and try to deal with the physicality and the matchups in that way. That to me would be what you need to mimic. Get you a lot of a superstar and a lot of NBA caliber players, and then go from there.
Just to kind of tie all of our discussions together, because like the title of this podcast is going big or going small, and I think we've indirectly kind of danced around those concepts and those things. One thing that is undeniable is that if the Pelicans' core players are Zion Williamson, Trey Murphy, and Herb Jones, if those are their core players, they are at a severe deficit of defensive rebounding. And so, if you are going to add a player, whether that is a big or that is a small, that is an area that they're going to continue to have to address. And it only, I think, becomes a little bit more difficult if you do add a guy like Fears, right? And so like, and this isn't like, look, this isn't just a Fears thing, right? Let's say for a hypothetical example that the Cavs were dumb and they were like, well, we gotta shake it up because it didn't work, and they're like, we're gonna move Garland, and the Pelicans were to acquire Darius Garland, right? And who I think will still be a really, really good fit. We were all, I think, in this podcast, we were all kind of like in on the idea of Garland last year, right? Yeah, especially like Jay was very much into it. Let's say they had a Garland, right? And your perimeter four players were Zion, Garland, Trey, and Herb. You know what you need out of the big man position, and that big man's got to be enormous and rebound the basketball.
Yep.
So can they still be a very, very good team if, let's say, this theory of Fears hits and he becomes this great advantage creator and he figures out his shot, right? Because I think it is a prerequisite in the NBA. If you're going to be a guard or a lead guard, you have to be able to shoot, especially off the dribble. Otherwise, you're cooked. The whole offense is cooked. Let's say he figures out a shot and you've found this like all-star level player in Fears. Do you think team building is simplified, or is it more difficult knowing that this is like you have one severe weakness and it's that?
Well, I mean, the team we're saying we mimic, they're not a great rebounding team. They're a chaos agent team. They find ways to get loose balls, and they, block shots, steals, foul you until they call it. And in Game 7 today, they actually were a great offensive rebounding team. So if you're gonna have a weakness, you have to overcome it with another strength. And if it's playing passing lanes, if it's playing perimeter defense, if it's guard your yard, playing zone, and you just guard your yard or play zone, you have to find ways to win the possession battle outside of defensive rebound.
And I'm with you. I'm not going to die on the Herb Jones hill if we're trying to fix a bigger problem. And so I think Herb Jones, whether he's a starter, whether he's a guy that comes off the bench, I think the Pelicans can work around that core. Like because when you say that, Mike, your core is as far as like the outlier guys who can really be a star, like it's Zion, Trey Murphy, and then whether Fears can become the guy, whether it's Darius Garland, like those guys, and then you build around those guys. And so if Herb Jones doesn't work around those guys, and that's like, and those are the outlier skill sets you've got, then you either trade one of those stars for another star that fits, or you work around Herb. And so the premise is still fair, right? Like you need to find rebounding, but it's not like you're left with one spot to fill that rebounding. I think I'd work around the Herb Jones piece as well.
It's a fair take, I would say. It's still difficult, I think, like at that wing or forward position too, especially because like, again, if you have a small like Fears or Garland or any of these other guards that may potentially be available, then if you don't have a Herb Jones, okay, you're borrowing from one issue and putting it in the other, right? Like with regards to like perimeter defense and defense in general.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but I mean, also that you've got it depends on what you call Zion, right? Because that in theory that could be your 1, 2, and 3, and so now you need a 4 and a 5. But it depends on how you go about roster building.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Are there any other prospects you guys want to like briefly touch on before we wrap this one up? I'm sure we're going to cover dozens of prospects at length.
We have 3 weeks before the draft, and I'm going to let a cat out the bag. We're going to try to do this every Sunday, so we need things to talk about. That means more draft prospects to talk about next week.
We're gonna have some fun guests, I think. I've been texting some folks, so we'll, I don't want to like promise something and then not deliver it, but it'll be nice to have some more experts in this field, like really say one what they've been hearing about guys, two just about that, and hopefully like by then we have greater clarity on what the Pelicans are trying to do. I know they've already interviewed Fears, but they've interviewed a lot of people. Like every time it comes out, oh, like, they met with this. Like unless you hear the Pelicans are meeting with Dylan Harper, like I don't really care. Like I don't care who they've interviewed or they're not interviewed, because if you hear that they made them, then they're bringing in Dylan Harper, then my antennas go up, and then I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? Why are they meeting with Dylan Harper?
Scoot Henderson. Scoot Henderson gave the medicals. That's when you start perking up.
Yeah. I mean, so that one is interesting.
We'll need I might need the air cover. My wife is 37 weeks pregnant, and so we'll see how available I am in 2 or 3 weeks. But it's gonna be fun.
Well, good luck to you and your wife, Mason.
Yes, congratulations again.
Yeah,
gonna be a roller coaster.
I know. Sophie was initially like part of the world of the Pelicans that never lost, but I'm hoping your next child becomes part of a world of Pelicans that never lose.
So Sophie was 2 days old when Tulane won the Cotton Bowl, and the Pelicans were cruising, and then the wheels came off the bus in 2020, the start of 2023. So let's hope for better outcomes this time.
Also, before we go, baseball has more than one royal family, and shouts out to Cody Bellinger hitting the grand slam to bust this game open.
Boom. Get out of here, you guys. Hey,
like and subscribe to the show. Share, tell a friend to tell a friend. I'm back here. I'm back pandering for follows and subscribers, and I'm gonna do it every week, every Sunday. Y'all be easy.